The administration has been seriously discussing invoking the Insurrection Act. That would give the president the power to direct federal troops to conduct law enforcement functions in the case of a national emergency. Is that the case? Are you seriously considering invoking the Insurrection Act?
Well, the president's looking at all of his options. Right now, he hasn't felt he needed to, but we have to remember, why are we talking about this, Kristen? Because crime has gotten out of control in our cities. The problem here is not the Insurrection Act or whether we actually invoke it or not. The problem is the fact that the entire media in this country, cheered on by a few far-left lunatics, have made it okay to tee off on American law enforcement. Yeah. And we're exploring everything that we can do to make sure that the American people are safe in their own country.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. This is one of those moments where I wish I had been wrong. For nearly a year leading up to Donald Trump's second election, I and a handful of others participated in a series of war games simulating what might happen if the Trump regime made good on its promise to wage a war of retribution against its political enemies. Almost every time, it came to the Insurrection Act. We are now very close to that point, and I don't think most Americans realize the enormous powers that such an invocation would immediately confer to the president. One of the people who participated in those simulations was Fred Wellman, a former Army helo pilot turned democracy activist. Many of you already know Fred from his appearances on this network. I talked to him about the looming threat of the Insurrection Act and about a new mission in politics that Fred has just taken on. Here's our conversation. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Fred Wellman, Army vet, political strategist, and host of the On Democracy podcast. Fred has been at the front lines, both in combat and in the fight for truth here at home. He's also an old friend on a new mission. Before we get to that, Fred, I've got to get your take on this latest from our vice president and my fellow Yale law grad, apologies everyone, J.D. Vance, on the Insurrection Act. I mean, I wish we hadn't been right about this.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think you and I both participated in war game scenarios where we talked about putting in activating the Insurrection Act by the President of the United States. In both scenarios, we recognize how bad it was. And for those not familiar, the Insurrection Act is based on a national emergency. It's over 150 years old. It hasn't been updated, and it allows them to deploy U.S. military forces domestically to put down an insurrection. It's not too complicated, to be honest with you, but it also allows a whole host of other things, like literally turning off TV stations that we, air with. Somebody pointed out they could actually turn off Bluetooth, because Bluetooth, by the definition of Bluetooth is a radio. And so in the words of the Insurrection Act from the 1800s, they could literally turn off Bluetooth signals if they want to. I mean, that's how severe the Insurrection Act is, because no one's chosen to update it. So when you see Trump and you see J.D. Vance like, yeah, well, we've got an insurrection, and they have to make one up, and if you saw the interviews, like, oh, we've got ICE agents being shot at. No, they're not. It's just made up stuff. But we also know the Supreme Court hasn't been real interested in stopping them in anything. So it's really, every American should rise up and say, hey, no, not on my watch, because this is an extremely dangerous moment. If they make up a national emergency, they make up an insurrection and deploy our forces, heavily armed combat forces, into cities to put down crime, we've crossed a Rubicon that's going to be very dangerous to turn back.
You can tell they want to do it. They are setting the stage to do it.
So hungry. Yeah.
Everything that they are doing with the start in LA and now in Chicago, they are trying to provoke the kind of reaction that will give them the excuse. And you're right. I don't think most Americans understand the extent of the powers that the Insurrection Act gives the chief executive. It's enormous. I mean, it includes suspending habeas corpus. It includes suspending the Posse Comitatus Act, deploying the military as law enforcement. We just take for granted, and I'm sure you had this frustration in these war games as well. The blue team is always invoking the law and filing petitions, and it doesn't matter to this administration, especially when they do something like invoking the Insurrection Act. How do we alert the American people to just how bad this could be?
Well, and it circles back to my next mission, right? I mean, in the end, our founders failed in one thing they never saw respect. Well, many things, but the idea that Congress would become subservient to the executive. I mean, the Congress, the legislature is a co-equal branch of government. It was never envisioned that there would be a subservient doormat for the chief executive. And that's what we've got. I mean, everything he's doing so many blatantly illegal things, from the rescissions. We don't have a line on veto in America. He can't just not spend money Congress allocated. The stupid shit, like change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. That's actually illegal. It's the Department of Defense by law. Change the names of the military bases. That was in the NDAA. That is illegal. And it's up to Congress to say, this is unacceptable, sue him, then the DOJ and the Supreme Court. But none of them are interested in doing that. So we have a Congress that has completely walked away from their Article 1 duties and are allowing Trump to do whatever he wants with no oversight and no stopping. And then you've got them actually participating. Like today, Jim Jordan on TV saying, oh, well, that's how it is. Yeah, these ICE agents are doing their job. They're great. They have no interest whatsoever in stopping this, either out of fear or and no idea of what they should be doing. It's kind of scary,
Well, this brings us to your next mission, but let me provide some context first, because Missouri politics has gotten insane over the past few years. And for those who know you, this will be especially funny. Your entry into the race is going to make you like the calmest person in Missouri politics.
I'm not sure I've ever been accused of that, but yes.
That's what you're thinking.
Well, what was anybody thinking? So as you mentioned, to make it clear, I am running for Congress in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. Our representative is a woman named Ann Wagner. You may not be familiar with her. And that's the issue. You may not be familiar with her because she's very careful about staying out of the major spotlights as much as possible and getting reelected every 2 years. She's been in Congress 2 years. She's never had a town hall. She has tripled her net worth, according to Quiver Analytics, to the point of somewhere around $26 million is now in her portfolio as she sits on the banking committee. So There's a lot of really weird shit, but she is a perfect example I just mentioned of someone who just simply goes along for whatever the Trump administration asks for. She's become a ready rubber stamp for whatever they do. She votes for everything and then comes back and then she doesn't even see her constituents or anything. So I came back 4 years. I did the Army 22 years. I did my own business for 10 years in DC as a veterans advocate. I joined the Lincoln Project. And then I came back. I met a wonderful woman from my hometown on the internet. I won't say where, but she said, hey, why don't you come on home? And I came back to St. Louis 4 years ago and immediately got involved in local politics to help folks, kind of use whatever national platform I've been blessed to have. And I've done that for 4 years. And then the final straw for me, honestly, Ken, you've got kids. I have 4 adult kids who are in every different way struggling with the moment we face, from owning a small business to being stuck in a job that won't allow them to get a new house. Or, my youngest son was a bartender in a very popular restaurant in Richmond, Virginia that didn't offer healthcare. When he went in for healthcare, he was qualified for Medicaid. And so for me, the final straw came after years of saying, I'm never going to run for office, passionately, while they debated the big billionaire bill. And if you remember the split screens, the House passed their version. The Senate was arguing their version, where they were actually saying they wanted more cuts to healthcare and more cuts to SNAP benefits, where they were going on TV saying that 20-year-old men were playing video games all day and getting free healthcare, which is not what my son was doing. And then the split screen, if you remember, like us on this camera, the split screen was Jeff Bezos's $56 million wedding in Venice, right?
Hey everyone, it's Ken. Quick break here to say thanks for watching and a huge shout out to everyone who supported my most recent reporting trip to Ukraine. I hope you followed the updates on Substack. I reported from Chernobyl, from Kyiv and Odessa, and from frontline positions alongside some of the bravest people I have ever met. If you haven't yet signed up for my Substack, please check it out. It's free to join. The link's below. Thanks.
And for me, it's something snapped at me. And so when the opportunity came, someone reached out and said, hey, how come you're not running? I said, because that's a terrible idea. I said, maybe it's not such a terrible idea. And I started calling friends like, Seth Moulton and I am very, Seth and I served in Iraq together. People don't know, but Seth and I are on the Multinational Security Transition Command Iraq staff together. I've known him since 2005. And then he got elected to Congress. And I reached out to Seth and said, am I crazy? He goes, oh yeah, definitely. You should do it. Which is pretty much, Andy Kim. Oh yeah, it's nuts. Go for it. You should do it. So, your friend Greg Landsman, a wonderful, just a steady voice. I really have the most respect for Greg Landsman. I reached out to Greg and he's like, yeah, it's really hard, but sometimes the moment calls you. So the moment called.
I'm glad you're focusing on those economic issues for the sake of the race, because that seems to be driving this sea change in American politics and honestly providing an entree to a group of voters we wouldn't have had a chance with just a couple of years ago. But I have to ask you about what I consider the foundational issues, the ones close to my heart, and I know this audience cares about them. And they're not really the kitchen table issues, but they define our democracy. It's the behavior of ICE. It's the extra legal, unconstitutional actions of this administration. And forgive me, but I'm going to put you on the spot here because we've got Eric Swalwell coming on, I think tomorrow. And he was really the first to throw down the gauntlet when he said, my advice to ICE agents right now is lawyer up, because the day will come when we're going to hold you accountable. This is still a nation of laws, and it might feel like you have all the power right now, but don't get too comfortable.
Yep. And it's all on video. The video lasts forever. I tell a story off on the trail, and people who watch my show are probably sick of the story, but it frames that entire conversation in my lived life. And if you may not remember it, I was in Iraq 3 times. The first tour at the 101st Airborne as a Black Hawk Battalion XO. And of course, as all of us in our first time we ended up doing civil affairs in our local region. So I controlled, civil affairs wise, a large swath of the area around Q West Air Base in southern Nineveh province. And amidst that, I met a man named Dr. Muhammad, who was the sheikh of our local village, who sort of was my go-between because he spoke English and was the first to reach out. And Dr. Muhammad became a very dear, dear friend of mine. And we had many conversations. And one day we were in when the bombs started going off, I'd probably say August, the bombs started going off on the Baghdad to Mosul highway, and which was in our sector. And I remember saying to Dr. Muhammad, I said, Muhammad, I don't get it. These are being planned in broad daylight by insurgents. People are seeing them. They're driving by. The highway's never empty. Why is no one reporting this? Why don't they see it and report it? He said, Major Wellman, he says, you must understand something. For 35 years under Saddam, you learned not to see things. You learned not to see. So, and this is the example he gave, Ken, that is the most chilling of it all today. You learned not to see when the men in the black SUVs pulled up at the house next door and took all the people away in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking, thank God I don't live I live in the United States. That'll never be a thing. And here we are, 22 years later, it's a thing. It's a thing where men in black masked men with no names are leaping out of vehicles and tackling gardeners. Yeah. They're tackling grandmas. Did you see the video in Chicago of them wrestling a woman out of the car in the pickup line of an elementary school, which was purposely done to terrorize children? I was read articles that children, like 22 children, were running away, and parents were grabbing their children and running for their lives. Not immigrant families, just armed men wrestling a woman out of her van. And she was a legal resident. She was released hours later. No, so they're doing this to terror with no charge because they're just, she looked illegal, and they're terrorizing the streets. They are the terrorists. And I say that without any compunction whatsoever. And if you can look at that, I'm not talking partisan rhetoric. I'm not talking, this is not Republican. This isn't MAGA. If you can look at that as a human, as a father, mother, grandfather, sister, brother, we watch a mother being wrestled out of her minivan in front of her children for no other reason than having brown skin. What have we become? You have to ask that question. And I agree with Swalwell. This will come a day. I don't know how we're going to do it, but by God, it is being documented in a lot of places. And if we don't launch an investigation that dwarfs the 9/11 investigation, that dwarfs the January 6th investigation, to get into the many, many laws that were broken in America to push this dark, dark agenda, then we have no business being a nation anymore. And so I promise if I get elected, we will not forget crimes. I'm watching the rule of law. I'm watching the Hatch Act be trampled upon. My God, Christy Noel put out a video to be run at airports blaming Democrats. It is so outrageous. It's not, people think, oh, it's just inappropriate. It's illegal. Say the words with me. Okay. It is illegal. There are laws. And if Congress isn't going to do their job this time, if the Republican Congress led by Speaker Johnson refuses the job, then damn it, we're flipping the House and we're going to do the job because Article 1 is clear, the duties.
I think you're on to something. Godspeed.
Thanks.
We've got your back. Where can people learn more about the campaign and help you out?
Oh, I appreciate it. And you can learn more at wellman4mo.com. That's WELLMAN4mo.com. Obviously, we're getting off the ground. I hope we can do this, man. I appreciate your support, brother.
Awesome. We'll put the link in the show notes. Good luck. We'll keep tracking.
Promise. Thanks, brother. Cheers.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.